It was a legitimate quarterback battle, apparently, out in Indianapolis, and it did not go Anthony Richardson's way, as Daniel Jones is now the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. You have I think there's a few layers to this one, and I find it very, very fascinating with this. And yeah, to Suter's point in the chat, the Colts are trying to earn their new Manning. Yes, a lot of people may be pointing to Arch Manning being the savior of the franchise if he comes out in the NFL draft this season. And look, Daniel Jones has already quarterbacked one team to a very high draft pick. He certainly is capable of doing that again here. But I think for the Colts, the major concern with this is not, okay, we're going with Daniel Jones, we're probably going to be tanking, and it's going to be fine. I think that the main concern with this is that the kid that you drafted really high just hasn't been able to cut it this season, or at all with the Colts. And I think that is the big one. And I think that there are lessons to be learned here and deeper dives to be done about how, just draft a quarterback. Keep drafting quarterbacks. You need a quarterback, draft a quarterback high. Is he the fifth best player on the board? Probably not, but we got to draft him high anyway. That's, I think, a flawed strategy that leads to things like this. Because it is not just, okay, and if this doesn't work, you grab the next one. This is now, 3 or 4 wasted years for the Indianapolis Colts, and they are not in a better spot for it. And now you are having to do this all again, because it's not just, okay, well, draft the kid, and if it doesn't work, we'll get him next year. That worked out for the Titans because they drafted Will Levis in the second round, and then he was bad, and you were able to pivot right away. When this happens, odds are, if it's not great, it'll still be good enough that it can kind of keep you in the middle, and then you're not in a spot to be drafting a quarterback. And with them, you think of the wasted years now with Jonathan Taylor, I think legitimately one of the most talented running backs in the National Football League. Michael Pittman, they have Josh Downs this year as well, who are two, I think, very talented wide receivers that you have just wasted everybody's time with. And they were actually able to go out and bring in a highly sought after offensive mind in Shane Steichen as the offensive coordinator, and wasted some years with that as well. Like, it is all just a gigantic waste of time out in Indianapolis. And now for Anthony Richardson, like, I don't know where you go from here. I don't know where, I can't imagine there's going to be a team next year that is like, hey, you know what we need? We need to give Anthony Richardson a shot. That's going to fix our problems. And he has a style that, if you bring him in as a backup quarterback, I just worry that, like, he's, unless it's a couple of teams, the style that you have to implement for him, he is another type of quarterback where if you have him as your quarterback, you have to kind of tailor everything to him, which is why I do think it has been a little bit weird that you had, like, Joe Flacco and him coming in. Like, those are two different halves of the offensive playbook. So I don't think that works very effectively for running an offense. So I think this is a very, very bad sign that Anthony Richardson wasn't able to win this job back. For Daniel Jones, it's not a bad spot. The division isn't good. The weapons around you are pretty good. That doesn't include the offensive line, but there are quite a few options now for him and an opportunity to show what he can do. And I am of the belief he's not great. That is the official opinion of this podcast, is that Daniel Jones isn't an awesome National Football League quarterback. But I do think that this is a chance with the running backs that they have, with the receivers that they have, and the schedule that they have, that this could at least earn him a few extra $1 million, and someone could give him an opportunity as a starting quarterback. But if I'm the rest of the division, I'm a little bit more worried now, which is wild to say, because I think Anthony Richardson just wasn't going to be that guy. And if I'm the Titans, Texans, or Jags, I'm pretty happy that, or I would have been pretty happy if they would have tried it again with him. Now with Daniel Jones, I think there is I think that there is an opportunity that they're going to actually go out and win some football games here with them. So it is the right move to make, but it is the right move after the wrong moves that were made for Indianapolis. Sue Taryn in the chat has asked a few things, so let me just run through some of these right now. Saying, English not my main tongue, so hard to keep up with you. Apologies for that. Arch has played literally 2 games. For him to be predicted number 1 is insane. There is a lot of that, and I do think a lot of those have kind of slowed down. It was just, he is this prodigy for a long time, and so there is some stuff from high school and everything working up to this point where, and obviously the name is just going to hype that a whole lot. Although we did have a very recent example of how hype based off of your last name doesn't always lead to high draft pick success. But I think that there's a lot of people quite excited about what Arch Manning could potentially do. Also saying that Anthony Richardson is done. He is the Jamarcus Russell. Granted, not a number 1 overall pick, but Anthony Richardson and Jamarcus Russell are literally the same thing. Yes, as a Raider fan here, talking about bouncing all over the place sports fan-wise, as a Raider fan, certainly can see the comparisons. At least Anthony Richardson won a few games in the NFL. Jamarcus looked really bad. But no, I mean, look, there's some comparisons there as well. And I think you've now seen it with Richardson and with Trey Lance. The quarterbacks who came out early and had like 1 good year, we're seeing more and more, you need more experience at the college level for you to be able to get thrown into this right away. So I think there's a lot of lessons that I think can be learned from the Anthony Richardson situation. When you look at team building, they brought him in and it was just like, hey, fix everything right away. They didn't have the offensive line for him. They had a couple of weapons at the time, but not enough to really threaten. Hopefully you guys didn't hear all that phone ringing going on there, but they had enough. They had a couple weapons, but not enough to really be, like, insulate him. It really was like, hey kid, fix everything. And he just wasn't ready. This was an example where they put him in too soon. They did not have the proper foundation in place to get him there, and they were relying on him to be able to get a team that was drafting high for a reason back to a high level as a football team. Like, it was this perfect storm of not putting things together. Jonathan Taylor is good, but he's no Barry Sanders, who carried a bad QB to the playoffs for 4 years. That's true. Like, Jonathan Taylor isn't best player on a playoff team. He's not Saquon Barkley or anything like that, but that's a good running back that is another offensive weapon that you can roll with. Daniel Jones is going to be a career backup after he leaves the Colts. I think that's probably fair. I think he's probably going to be kind of late stages Andy Dalton, where you draft a quarterback and you bring in Daniel Jones for a year to give the quarterback time to figure it out. Maybe you don't have the best offensive line, and Daniel Jones becomes cannon fodder. And once you get the rest of the team figured out, now the kid comes in. He's going to be that guy. He's going to be the backup that you bring in as some insurance around a young piece. Okay, we've named one, the Colts. What are some other teams that are going to be tanking? That's a good question. Just kind of bouncing around. Tomorrow we're going to look at teams going from worst to first in the NFL. In terms of teams that are going to be just like straight tanking this year, I wonder if we get to a point, just did overrated teams. I wonder if we get to a point where the Miami Dolphins turn into one that is just like, okay, it's not working. We fired the coach. Let's see how many losses we can accumulate and try to get this thing back on track a little bit here. I think the Cleveland Browns, maybe not by trying, but they're just a bad team, so I think they are going to be down in those dumps as well. And then, New Orleans. I think and honestly, that makes it a little bit interesting that in a year where potentially, Arch Manning could be coming out. Is that a lot? Like, he could come out next year, right? I'm not... yes, he still has the opportunity to not go to the draft this year. But if we are talking about him being as the number 1 guy, it would be interesting that the 2 teams that had the opportunity for Arch Manning would be the Indianapolis Colts and the New Orleans Saints. You have the obvious family ties to the organization, and then the obvious geographical ties of they live there. So I think that would be a fascinating push to a potential number 1, and potentially Arch Manning being a franchise changer once again in a city where that name is very well thought of, regardless of how you view his stature as a prospect. So that is the NFL story for today.